Hi folks, I just wanted to run through my 2x2 Kriegspiel rules, which I've ripped off entirely from Rod Humble. Thank you, Rod, for all your good work, whoever you are and wherever you are in the world. God bless you. I've stolen your rules and modified them to my own purposes. I want to discuss this because it's useful for those who are playing in my Maustria campaigns, but also for those who are playing in my live Kriegspiel games. So just a very quick brief run through of what happens. So it's a one side goes and the other side goes, except that the non-active side gets to shoot while the active side is moving. So the active side will move and rally their units, then the other side shoots, and then we resolve on melee. Now how this will work in a Kriegspiel, a live game, is that players will need to give some sort of instruction for what they want, when they want their troops to shoot. Because when infantry fire in this game, they become pinned. They get stuck. They just start shooting and shooting and shooting, and they will stay shooting until someone tells them to stop, until they rally. So you may not want your men to automatically shoot when they're being charged or when they spot the enemy, and I'll expect you to give some guidelines on that. If you think you're going to be, if you're on the advance and you need to keep on moving, you may choose to reserve your volley, and if the enemy charge you, you may just choose to go straight to melee. And that's entirely up to you. You can expect to win the melee and keep on advancing. If you open fire, you may stop the enemy from making it to melee, but you will then be pinned until the enemy are driven off, you rally, those sorts of things. The movement rates are pretty standard there. The big change I've made to that is to say that any unit moving on a road moves at 6 inches. So I don't care if it's infantry, I don't care if it's cavalry, I don't care if it's artillery. If it's moving on a road, in a road column, it's going to move 6 inches, which for my Alma game will be about a mile. 20-minute turns, moving about a mile on a road. A body of marching men moves 3 miles to an hour. 3 miles to the hour. I learnt that from Dad's army. So they're moving along 3 miles an hour. Now, you may say cavalry should be faster than that, and perhaps that's true, except that I've read recently some places where actually cavalry on the march, in march column, is slower than infantry because they need to preserve their horses. They can certainly go longer. So a man on a horse can probably ride for 10 or 12 hours a day, whereas a man walking maybe ought to walk only 8 or 9. Or horses can even go longer than that, but they can't go faster in march column. In open ground, moving across the open ground, yes, the cavalry are faster, and that's reflected in the rules there. There's some modifiers for crossing streams and rivers and those sorts of things and distances. Basically, it'll cost slow you down. In our Alma battle, it will cost half. Crossing the river Alma will cost automatically half speed. That sort of thing. Okay, and also woods. So most formations in this game are formed infantry. Only light infantry can move into woods without being disrupted. For our Alma game, there's not a great deal of woods that will disrupt you. They'll generally just slow you down because the troops are still moving in tight formations, in line, that sort of thing. Rallying is an issue there, so you have to be within 6 inches, so a mile in our Alma game, of the headquarters in order to rally. If the headquarters is attached to the unit, there's a bonus. You can see the other modifiers there, and basically you rally on a 5+. So if you've opened fire with your muskets in an earlier turn and become pinned, then you're going to need to roll a 5+ to rally. And see that it says enemy within 2 inches, so if the enemy is close by, you're not going to rally. It's going to be very unlikely that you rally. But once the enemy is driven back or destroyed or whatever, then you should be able to rally and come back, particularly if a general is there to help you. But if the general rides off with the men in front and leaves units behind, they will just stop. They will not rally. You need to stay within a mile or so in order to have an effect and get those troops back in command and get them working again. The artillery and musket fire ranges are there. So for our Alma game, we're in the 1850s. Our muskets are rifled muskets, but they're not great rifles. They're primitive rifles. They do have a longer range than just a smoothbore musket, but at the scale we're talking, that doesn't really matter. It repeats it there that infantry fire that is pinned, so it's all infantry. The guns obviously are not infantry, so guns can fire and then in the next turn move. So if your guns are battering away at the enemy and the enemy are approaching, you can say, right, limber up and let's ride away. And then your guns will be ready to fire again 20 minutes later, because that's how guns worked in these days. They could move relatively quickly. Of course, if the guns stay and fight, They're likely to stop the enemy with grape shot, but if the enemy make it to contact, then they're going to be destroyed. We've got 3 states of units, well 4 I suppose. A unit is either in good order, which means it can move and shoot and do all those things, or it's pinned, which means it can rotate to face in any direction. So if someone charges it, it will turn to face. That's to represent the idea that they can form square or respond. The battalion commander is able to respond appropriately. And that's represented on our pictures with smoke. So I put smoke in front of the unit to show that it's pinned. If the smoke is on top of the unit, that means it's disrupted. A disrupted unit can't fire. It's very vulnerable in melee. But I've seen it happen that disrupted units, I had a recent battle report where a disrupted unit of militia was able to defeat a unit of heavy cavalry that charged them. I mean, the odds of that is 1 in 36 on my scale, but it does happen. So disrupted isn't useless, but they're going to be in trouble. Units also can rout. So if you rout from combat or whatever you've seen, there's a good chance that you'll actually just skip straight to being destroyed, a 1 in 2 chance, 1 in 3 chance, sorry, on a roll of a 1 or 2. And then unit is destroyed, it's off the table. So a target that routs or is destroyed, there is then a chance that it will cause other units around it to break and run. So there's under panic. If a unit is destroyed or routing passes within an inch from the unit, take a rally test. And on this, this is my addition to complicate Rod Humble's wonderful rules. Some militia is better than others, some regulars are better than others, some guards are better than others. And so they've got different morale values there. Those will be hidden, particularly in our Alma game. But you can expect that the British guards are pretty high quality and the Russian militia are pretty poor quality. And that's just how that'll be reflected. And if the unit panics, then it will either rout or become disordered or become pinned. So it may have smoke in front of it. It doesn't mean they're actually shooting anything. It just means that they are in a state of disorder and not ready to march. Melee is the other big section here. So after we've done movement, rally, shoot, melee. Melee just means I roll a dice for each side with the list of modifiers there. Yes. So cavalry are powerful, particularly heavy cavalry are powerful. In our Alma game, all the cavalry is light cavalry, but it's really dangerous for cavalry of any kind to try and charge infantry in good order. So infantry in good order, or even pinned infantry, have a good chance of forming square and stopping the cavalry before they can reach melee. If the cavalry can reach melee, then there's issues that will then they have a chance of winning. But in our Alma game, we're only going to have light cavalry. Light cavalry really should only be sent against infantry if the enemy is disrupted, or if you're feeling lucky to charge guns. You can get through guns, but it's very unlikely you'll make it through. But if you make it through, you'll probably kill them. I think that's all we need to talk about. There is a unit costs there, which I have used in pickup games before, which is sort of why it's there. It's more as a legacy thing. There's a slight description with some of the rules for the different units there, and what they represent for our purposes. And then just the 2 bits there in italics summarize what I've said. When an infantry shoots its muskets, it becomes pinned. There's likely to be an enemy within 2, so it becomes impossible to rally unless it is guards or in base-to-base contact with the headquarters. And even then, unlikely. So the idea is that they start shooting, they fire their really good volley, then there's smoke and chaos and confusion, and it's going to take a long time to get that unit back into order, particularly if they're being shot at by someone nearby. And then, yes, a little note there about cavalry and being careful what to do with it. It's not designed to charge enemy in good order. So that's my 2-page version of Rod Humble's 2x2 rules, which I've modified for my own purposes and unnecessarily complicated perhaps in some ways. But it's a good set of rules. Any questions, let me know. Thanks for listening. If you're part of the Alma game, I'll see you on Sunday. If you're part of my Maustrian games, this was just some background information which you may find interesting. If you're not a part of either of those, then I encourage you to get a copy of 2x2 Napoleonics. You can Google for that, or I can provide my ripped off version as well. Thanks very much.